Let's start from the bottom and work towards the most brutal leaders on the list. Number 7, Hideki Tojo. Born in 1884, Tojo rose to become Prime Minister of Japan during World War II. His tenure? A period that saw Japan's militaristic expansion across Asia. Tojo's recipe for devastation included war atrocities, forced labor, and civilian massacres. Under his rule, Japan invaded China, Korea, and Southeast Asia. The rape of Nanking, his gruesome idea, resulting in only 300,000 Chinese deaths through murder, rape, and looting. He also oversaw the brutal treatment of POWs and civilians, including the infamous Bataan Death March, where thousands of American and Filipino prisoners perished under grueling conditions. Tojo wasn't addicted to the method of immediate slaughter, he played the long game too. His policies led to widespread famine and suffering. Forced labor camps were another lovely addition, where countless individuals were worked to death in mines and construction projects for the Japanese Empire's glory. His expansionist policies left a trail of destruction across the region. Hideki Tojo was methodical and fiercely nationalistic, embodying the Bushido Code, yet twisting it to justify his brutal actions. He believed in Japan's divine right to rule Asia and saw war as a legitimate means to that end. When World War II ended, Hideki Tojo tried to kill himself, but the attempt, despite a doctor's help in marking the heart spot to ensure he wouldn't miss, was as successful as his military strategies, both ending in total failure. In the end, he was saved, faced trial, and was executed. The death toll for Hideki Tojo's reign of terror? 8 million lives. Number 6, Leopold II of Belgium. Born in 1835, Leopold wasn't satisfied with his tiny European kingdom, he wanted more, so in his spare time, he claimed the Congo Free State as his personal playground. Spoiler, it didn't end well for the Congolese. Leopold's rule in the Congo was a horror story of brutality and greed. Think of it as Saw, but with rubber trees. His administration exploited the region's resources through forced labor and harsh punishments. Workers who didn't meet rubber quotas faced mutilation or death. Hands were chopped off as proof of punishment, turning the Congo into a nightmare factory of severed limbs. But wait, there's more! Leopold's forces also indulged in mass killings to keep the locals in line. Villages were burned, families torn apart, and millions of people perished under his reign. Leopold was a walking contradiction, a cultured king who loved freaking art and architecture, yet orchestrated a genocide. He built grand palaces in Belgium, funded by Congolese blood and sweat, all while playing the benevolent ruler. When his atrocities were exposed, Leopold faced international outrage. The Belgian government took over the Congo in 1908, but the damage was done. Leopold died a year later, leaving behind a legacy drenched in blood with a death toll of 12 million lives. That's like erasing Belgium's entire population at the time. Some might call this irony, or rubbery, since the material involved was rubber. Number 5, Tamerlane. Born in 1336, also known as Timur, the Turco-Mongol conqueror who made sure no one missed his entrance or exit. Instead, he set out to conquer West, South, and Central Asia, leaving a trail of devastation that would make even the most hardcore action movie look like a children's bedtime story. Tamerlane's campaign strategy was simple: kill everyone and burn everything. He wasn't picky about his methods. Siege warfare? Check. Mass executions? Double check. His favorite pastime seemed to be stacking the skulls of his enemies into towering pyramids. Too bad Tetris didn't exist back in the days. That might have helped him. Cities that resisted his rule were razed to the ground, their populations massacred without mercy. His conquests included parts of modern-day Iran, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and India. In Delhi, he reportedly killed 100,000 captives in a single day because he found them a bit too troublesome to manage. It's like killing your boss because you don't feel like working today. Tamerlane's legacy wasn't just carved in stone, but also in staggering numbers. With an estimated death toll of 17 million, he didn't just conquer lands, he dramatically reduced the workload for future census takers. Number 4, Adolf Hitler. The man who redefined evil in the 20th century was born in 1889, and he went from a failed artist to the dictator of Nazi Germany. turning the world into his personal chessboard of horror. Hitler's grand plan for the world started with the invasion of Poland in 1939, kicking off World War II. Was it enough? Of course not. He had a personal vendetta against certain groups, leading to the Holocaust, the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews. But why stop there? Hitler's policies also targeted Romani people, disabled individuals, homosexuals, political opponents, and anyone else who didn't fit his twisted version of a pure Aryan race. I wouldn't want to owe that man $20 back in the days. Hitler's methods of mass murder were industrial in scale. Gas chambers, forced labor camps, starvation, and medical experiments that would make Frankenstein blush. The infamous Auschwitz, Dachau, and Treblinka camps became the epicenters of this human slaughterhouse. Hitler wasn't just a man with a bad mustache, he was a charismatic demagogue who manipulated an entire nation into following his genocidal path. His propaganda machine was as efficient as his war machine, convincing millions that his version of a Third Reich was worth any cost. By the time the Allies brought an end to his regime in 1945, Europe was left in ruins and millions were dead. Hitler, true to form, chose cowardice over accountability, committing suicide in his bunker as the Allies closed in. His vision of a millennial Reich led to approximately 18 million lives. Number 3. Joseph Stalin. Born in 1878, Stalin took control of the Soviet Union after Lenin's death and decided to turn the place into his personal nightmare factory. Stalin's methods for maintaining power were as varied as they were brutal. First up, the Great Purge, where he decided that political rivals, perceived enemies, and pretty much anyone who looked at him funny needed to go. Show trials, executions, and mysterious disappearances became the norm. But why stop at purges when you can add famine to the mix? Stalin's forced collectivization of agriculture led to the Holodomor in Ukraine, where millions starved to death because they had the audacity to exist. Farmers were forced to give up their land and produce, leading to widespread famine. I hope you like soil, because that's all there is on the menu with Stalin in charge. Then there were the gulags, Stalin's version of summer camps, but with less water slides and more waterboarding. Millions were sent to these camps for crimes as minor as telling a joke about Stalin's mustache. No postcards here, just pickaxes and a one-way ticket to Siberia. Pro tip, don't joke about a dictator's facial hair. Stalin died in 1953, leaving behind him around 24 million, mostly unmarked, gravestones. Number 2. Genghis Khan. Born around 1162, Genghis Khan decided that herding sheep was a bit too boring, so instead, he set out to create the largest contiguous empire in history. Genghis had a simple approach to diplomacy: submit or die. If you chose option B, congratulations, you got the full Genghis experience. His military campaigns across Asia and Europe were legendary for their brutality. Cities that resisted him were utterly destroyed, their populations massacred. Genghis Khan managed to keep control over his large empire thanks to his communications system, a brand new technology called horseback riding. Who needs email when you have a network of horsemen delivering messages across thousands of miles? However, Genghis Khan also instilled some positive things in his empire. He promoted trade, established a code of laws, and even practiced religious tolerance. So as long as you didn't mind the occasional massacre and didn't resist, I guess you were fine? Those are big air quotes. These Mongol invasions effectively cooled the planet, scrubbing around 700 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere. Genghis Khan killed an estimated 40 million people, resulting in a man-made climate change. Number 1. Mao Zedong. Born in 1893, Mao didn't just dabble in chaos, he perfected it. As the founding father of the People's Republic of China, Mao's policies included the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. First up, the Great Leap Forward. Mao decided China needed to industrialize overnight, so he launched a campaign to transform the agrarian economy. The result? A catastrophic famine that killed an estimated 30 to 45 million people. Imagine a government policy so bad it could literally starve a population the size of Canada. Farmers were forced into collective farms, grain was exported, and the countryside was left to starve. The only thing that leapt forward was the death toll. You might be thinking that this is a lot, but this is only half of the fun. Enter the Cultural Revolution, Mao's attempt to reassert his control by purging remnants of capitalist and traditional elements from Chinese society. This wasn't just a political purge, it was a societal blender set to liquefy. Intellectuals, perceived dissidents, and anyone with a brain were targeted. Even having glasses could lead you to a public execution. Schools shut down, historical artifacts were destroyed, and chaos reigned supreme. Millions were tortured, killed, or simply disappeared. The death toll during Mao's reign, between 45 and 70 million lives lost. Mao turned China into a dystopian experiment with a body count that's hard to fathom. Despite this, some people still viewed him as a great revolutionary leader. In the end, he died peacefully in his bed, proving that irony really does have a dark sense of humor.